Well, hello. I recognize that probably after lunch, your blood pressure is dropping down, your serotonin levels are going up, and the thing you probably want to do is take a nap. I'm going to try and give you a dose of exponential espresso and try and wake you up a little bit. As mentioned, I was approached back, I guess now in 1993 by the U.S. government to work at age 15 on computers. I guess Google wasn't around at the time. And it was a really exciting opportunity. One, I had to get a work permit because I was below legal age in Virginia. And two, I got to actually work on some classified research projects that involved computers that were lots of fun. So whether you decide to go into the private sector or the public sector, first and foremost, I actually want to thank all of you for making the choice to be here and actually celebrate you for making the choice to choose cyber. Because the world we're going into is not just changing linearly, it's changing exponentially. And that's what I want to try and share with you over the next 20 minutes about how the world is changing fast. So first and foremost, does anybody know what that's an image of? You want to do it? Yes, what is it? It's a flak jacket. And you wear a flak jacket because when you're going to get shot at, you want to have something between you. Because it's not kind of nice to get hit by bullets. And the reason why I want to show that is because, again, I mentioned how our world is changing quickly. And it's going to require people that are going to step outside the status quo and do new things. But it's worth pausing for a moment and recognizing that there's a difference between management and leadership. Management is when you do what's expected of you. In fact, to some degree, we all have to do that, whether it's what our boss expects of us, whether it's what our peers expect of us, or what our reports think of us, what Congress or the administration or the public think of us. If we don't meet some expectations, you're going to be out of a job pretty quickly. That said, if you only do what's expected of you in a rapidly changing world, you're going to be out of date fast. And that's exactly the challenge of cyber, which is if you only do what you need to do and you don't think ahead in terms of the future, you will fall behind. Now, leadership is when you intentionally step outside of those expectations. And when you step outside of those expectations, someone's going to say, get back in your box. And the reality, though, is you're going to incur friction. So that's where you have to have a sort of flak jacket to be able to manage that friction. But more importantly, recognize that actually leadership comes from the word lead, which means to send unto death. You might say, well, what was that from? Well, back in ancient Greece, the leads were actually the ones that carried the flag in front of the melee army. And that's nice, it can show the army where to go, until, well, one army meets another army, and guess who's the first to die? The leads, thus being sent unto death. Nelson Mandela said his most trying moment was actually as a leader when he turned to his own party, the African National Congress, and said we were going to make peace with the white minority. He almost had a coup. Isaac Rabin, an Israeli, when he said he was going to make peace with the Palestinians, was actually assassinated by an Israeli. So for all of you here, you have the opportunity to be leaders. In fact, I hope you are leaders in our changing world. But what I want to try and impart with you first and foremost is have a strategy for how you're going to manage that friction when you step outside of expectations. Next question, does anyone know what that's a dot of? Earth? Yes, it is of Earth. Sometimes people say Pluto. We did pass by it, but that's actually Earth. It's the pale blue dot, and in fact, it's our home 3.7 billion miles away. It was taken in 1990 when Voyager 1 turned around to actually take that photo, and it literally took 5.5 hours for sunlight to be reflected from our planet to the Voyager 1 spacecraft, and then another 5.5 hours for radio waves to send that image back to us. Now, what I want to actually sort of think back is Voyager 1 was launched in 1977. And how has the world changed since then? So 1977, there were about 4.2 billion humans on the face of the planet. And for those of you that remember it, that was also the year that the Apple II went on sale for the first time with a whopping 4 kilobytes of RAM, which will save like, what, about 1 or 2 seconds of an MP3 nowadays? By the time Voyager 1 had actually traveled to 3.7 billion miles to actually take that photo of our planet, we've now actually gone up to about 5.3 billion humans by 1990. So we've gone up by 1.1 billion. Windows 3.0 comes out at that time. And also December of that year, December 1990, a young Tim Berners-Lee turns on the first web server ever. Any guesses as to how many web servers there are come 2013?
Over 9,000.
9,000? That's probably a good bet. Let's do another order of magnitude. Any other guesses? How about 850 million? 850 million by the time we get to 2013. In fact, this year we're past 1 billion web servers, and that's just web servers. We're not talking other types of servers on the internet. There are 7.1 billion human beings on the face of the planet by 2013. And I trust this crowd knows what a zettabyte is. Raise your hand if you do. Good. Those who don't, it's 1 billion terabytes. So 2013 saw 4 billion terabytes, or 4 zettabytes of data. The thing that's also fascinating about 2013 is that's the year that there's the same number of network devices on the face of the planet as there are humans. 7 billion network devices, 7 billion humans. Let's just go 2 years ahead, 2015. Any guesses how many network devices now? Double? Exactly. We're up to 14 billion. Such by the time we get to 2022, there's going to be anywhere between 75 to 300 billion network devices on the face of the planet. That's not linear change, that's exponential change. That's why what you are doing here today to be leaders is so important. We'll only go up to about 8 billion human beings. What's also fascinating is 2022 is when there'll be 96 zettabytes, 96 billion terabytes of data on the planet, which is more data than all human eyes see in the course of a year. All human eyes on the face of the planet. It's also twice the amount of data all humans ever send to each other in the course of our species history times 2. We will be drowning in data, and the challenge will be how do you make sense of it? Google search will no longer work because we only go past the first or second page of results. We don't look beyond that. There's going to be a lot of signals lost in the noise, and there are things that we're going to miss. So, I, of course, have been in the public sector. I've also been in the private sector. I've also been in nonprofits and academia. But I define public service as what we, the people, choose to do together. And if that's the case, then it actually begins with all of you. Because regardless of whether you're in the private sector or in the public sector, you are all members of the public. And that's what public service is about. Then it also includes those that are actually private sector partners that are working with us. It also includes those who are government professionals. So I raise that because we need to start thinking about how can we adapt public service. As I just showed, our world is not changing linearly. It's changing exponentially. And regardless of whether you're in the private sector or the public sector, we generally don't build our organizations to deal with exponential change. This is a photo of space taken in 1995 by NASA. It's at night. And what you see are points of light. And I want to show that because if you fast forward to 2009, this is a map of Facebook friends. And the difference with that is we've gone from having points to having connections. Now what's interesting is you see certain countries disappear, Russia and China. You see other countries get brighter. That doesn't mean they don't have social media, it just means they're not on Facebook. Now that was 2009. It may have changed since then. But what we're going into is a world that requires you to make connections, not operate just within a single point. So, it's also worth noting that actually the US, when the Constitution was signed, Ben Franklin actually remarked saying, I know that the United States can continue to exist and the great American experiment will continue for the next 50 years. That was back in 1779. Of course, 50 years have come and gone. In fact, 240 years have come and gone. It is an experiment. An interesting thing is experiment and expertise both have the root expert, which means out of danger. That the only way you get expertise is you do experiments which by themselves are dangerous. There is no textbook for the world we're going to. And of course, Silicon Valley gets this. Silicon Valley gets the fail fast, fail often model because they can do that because they have venture capital fund. But how many of you would be willing to allow the government to do a fail fast, fail often model? You probably wouldn't get past the first or second try before whoever was doing it was out of a job. And I raise that because that's the challenge of the world we're facing, which is while Silicon Valley can do the fail fast, fail often model until they find something that works, Department of Defense really can't go back to taxpayers and say, we tried it, it didn't work out, can we get another $1 trillion of venture capital fund, please? We also don't have an IPO at the end. But that is the world we're going into in which all of us will need to experiment, whether we're in the public, private sector, or public sector. So, also just to give you a sense of the scale of change, 2014, 1.25 billion mobile phones were shipped in that year alone, compared to 500 million non-smartphones and only 300 million computers. If there is any doubt that your smartphone is where everything is going, that should show you that's where it's headed. It's also worth noting 2.3 billion mobile broadband connections, and more than half of them are in developing nations, not developed nations. On top of it, within the average minute in 2014, 11.5 million text messages are sent, and mobile is now 2% of the world's GDP and growing. This is a quickly changing world. In fact, mobile is the fastest, most adopted technology we have ever seen on the face of the planet to reach in terms of penetration. I have no doubt there'll be something after it too, and it'll be adopted even faster. There are several people that say the next 5 years will change faster than the last 15 years combined. That's what we have to look forward to. It is also worth pointing out that the amount of data sent by mobile phones alone is right now about 2.4 million exabytes, that's 1 million terabytes, and it's going to grow tenfold in the next 4 years. Anybody know who this is a picture of? Guesses? That's a young Ensign Nimitz with the US Navy back in 1904. Now, Ensign Nimitz, back in 1904, was piloting his ship, the USS Decatur, when he ran it aground in the Philippines. He was court-martialed, but not drummed out of the Navy. Instead, he was assigned to submarines. About 35 years later, became one of only 2 5-star admirals we ever had in the US Navy. He helped us win the war in the Pacific. Without him, we probably would not have won. But think about it. Imagine nowadays, not an ensign, but maybe a lieutenant or lieutenant commander with the US Navy runs their boat aground in the Philippines. How long on Facebook and Twitter would it have been fire Nimitz? How long would the administration and Congress been saying, you need to come before us with your boss and your boss's boss, and they probably would have all lost their jobs. And we would have lost a leader that had learned from their mistakes and eventually became a 5-star admiral. I celebrate the internet has made us more transparent. I am just concerned it has also made us more risk averse and risk tolerant of those people that make mistakes early in their career. I personally would prefer to have people that make mistakes early and learn from them than people that never make a mistake and try to rise up to the ranks. But I highlight that story of Ensign Nimitz because I have no doubt you will be in life sometimes where something doesn't go as you planned. Seize that, learn from that, and grow from that. So, I told you how the world is changing. I told you about a little bit of the challenges. Let me tell you a little bit about some of the opportunities to think differently about how we do public service. Now, I arrived at the FCC in late 2013, August of 2013, and historically, the FCC had spent anywhere between $3 to $4 million a year collecting data on how fast broadband rates were in homes and in cars. This was to inform policymaking. So we drive cars around, we pay for installations in homes where people would volunteer to actually monitor your internet speeds. That was about $3 to $4 million of the taxpayers' dollars. And they wanted to do an experiment where they could actually give you an app that you could download. In fact, you can find it right now on either the Google Play Store or iOS, FCC Speed Test app. And if you choose to download it, it would anonymously collect your data, share it with a third party, and then share it with the FCC to produce the first crowdsourced map of connection speed by provider. Now, this was late 2013. Snowden had happened. And you can imagine here I am with the government saying, hi, would you like to download an app for the government onto your phone that will collect data? Probably not going to have a lot of success. But what we decided to do was it was open source. So you can actually find the code for the FCC Speed Test app on GitHub. You can actually see by design we don't collect your IP address. You can see by design we don't know who you are in a 5-mile radius. And we actually have a very simple terms and conditions. And so while not everyone went to GitHub to look at the code, those who did actually took the chance and actually looked at it and came back and said, yeah, they're actually doing exactly what they said. We were actually the 4th most downloaded app right behind Google Chrome for a while on the iOS store. That shows that the public is hungry if they have trust in actually participating in policymaking. So you can think about how to use this for other things as well. Could you use it for voluntary public safety events? Could you use it for other things where people choose to do things as opposed to being surprised by them? How many people have heard of crisiscommons.org? Got a few, that's good. If you haven't, highly recommend you take a chance to look it out. Crisiscommons.org is the idea that you can actually use SMS texting to report on natural disasters. It was actually first real use when the earthquake happened in Haiti back in 2009. And SMS texting was still available. Everything else was pretty much down. And there were 2 individuals, one that was 9 months pregnant, the other one her sister. She was trying to drive her to the hospital because she was beginning to go into labor. And along the way, she used SMS texting to update her Facebook page and said, the bridge is down, I can't go this way, or this road is impassable, there's electrical wires here. That one gave situational awareness so that those who were responding to disasters knew what areas were accessible and those that were not. But even more importantly, it allowed the US Navy to actually send a 6-person team to where their location was, bring the 2 sisters back, and she was able to successfully give birth. It's this idea of surveillance as opposed to surveillance. Surveillance is what we choose to do with each other to actually make ourselves safer, as opposed to having an authoritarian figure do it. And I raise that because there may be things in cyber where maybe the solution isn't a single point or a single vertical. There may be things that we can choose to do together to make ourselves safer. And it's going to require some experiments. And it's going to require your leadership. But I raise that as a possible thing to think about. This may sound a little far-fetched, although I imagine with this crowd you're a little bit more savvy about algorithms. 2013, for $60,000, there was a challenge to see if anyone could write an algorithm that would grade papers as good as a third-grade teacher. And for $60,000, someone actually won that challenge. It was actually a hedge fund trader that actually had free time on their hands. Find the same grammar mistakes, find the same errors, and make recommendations to fix the paper. 2014, Xerox comes out with a copier that will take a handwritten test, handwritten answers, scan it, and grade it for the teacher. Now, right now, it's more expensive than teachers, so don't worry, teachers, professors, you're not out of a job yet. But it does show where the world is going, which is there are things that require pattern matching that machines can do really well. 2015, there's actually a hedge fund elects to its board of directors an algorithm and gives it voting rights. I've actually been asked when will it happen when there actually will maybe be a commissioner at the FCC that's an algorithm. There actually are already efforts underway to actually take the law and put it in algorithmic form so you can ask questions of the computer, is it legal for me to do this, or what's the best way for me to do it, and the machine will answer it. 2015 also is a year in which IBM Watson is right now being tested to see which meetings you should go to in the workplace, which meetings you should skip, and if you do go to a meeting, who should go to those meetings with you to be the most beneficial. It's not that algorithms will replace humans by any stretch of the imagination. It's more pairing them so they do more of the rote work and the pattern matching work, and it allows humans to be more creative. This is where we're going to, and I have no doubt, when we go to cyber, more and more is going to be pairing humans and machines. But of course, the question, as you all know, is can you trust that machine? Other thing to think about, how many people know about the makers movement? Good, we got some people. If you don't, it's the idea that people can do things with relatively inexpensive parts, like Raspberry Pi, do-it-yourself drones, do things that traditionally were so expensive that only large nation states or corporations could do it. That first photo over there with those 3 women, they were able to build for less than 45 bucks using a Raspberry Pi, a urine-powered generator, so they could do their homework at night. Also over there, that's in Nigeria, using a cell phone, they were able to actually produce a baby monitor for less than 50 bucks. It would monitor 40 different vital signs and use SMS texting to send that to any doctor in the world continuously. It's the idea that, again, things that were only available in the past to nation states are now available to humans. It's worth pointing out that your smartphone, if you have one, and I assume most of you have smartphones? Yes? No one has a smartphone? Oh, okay. We have some people that are still behind the curve. Your smartphone, if you do have one.
Don't worry, you will be assimilated sometime sooner or later. Resistance is futile.
We will get to you. Your smartphone, if you do have one, has more computing power than President Reagan had available to him through the Pentagon in 1980. And the next 1 billion people on the face of the planet that don't have a smartphone that will get one will probably get it for less than 50 bucks. In fact, maybe you'll get it from another provider. I was going to say, you may get another one today, is what I heard. So that's where the world is going. But like all things, technology is amoral. It's how we humans choose to use it to determine whether it's good or bad. Unfortunately, when the Mumbai terrorist attacks happened in 2009, they used the same tools you and I use on a daily basis. They use GPS, Google Maps, they use Facebook to determine who they should assassinate. The same technologies you and I use for good, other people can use for other ends. And that's the nature of cyber as well. Everything that you've been trained here today that's on the white hat side can obviously be used on other sides as well. So, let me leave you with one closing thought. This is again a picture of us. This is now 1994 when Cassini is flying past Saturn. And in that speech, Carl Sagan says, look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know. Everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the only dot, the only home we've ever known. I salute all of you for being change agents. I wish you best on your journey, and thank you again.